And the pattern that I have with breakups, and that I see a lot of people kind of following suit, is when we end a relationship, our mind will start to create a story versus like the truthful facts that we know. And then the story we make up is things that we assume, things that we project, things that we have insecurities about. And that creates kind of the falling out aspect of any breakup or ending of a relationship, if even if it's like a friendship. When we operate from a place of fear or pain, instead of coming at it from love in any interaction, what we end up doing is creating a cycle for ourselves of perpetuating our own pain. And what I mean by this is by looking at your former partner and starting to build kind of resentment towards them. That's a coping mechanism for us to translate the hurt and the emotions into something that's slightly easier to bear, which is like the other person is at fault. And that's easier to accept than I'm at fault. If I'm at fault, that means I did something wrong, which means I'm responsible for the outcome of it, which means there's actions I can take to rectify this in the future. And it may not be that relationship, but like as an individual, as a person, this is something I can change or characteristic I can work on about myself to improve and show up better in relationships. But the hardest part about that is coming to the realization and accepting that we have shortcomings. And the ego will kind of come up and be like, well, let's protect you from that gross feeling of we are still learning and growing as an individual, or we have shortcomings, and who can be the scapegoat in this interaction? And that's going to be the person that's the cause of the emotional hurt and pain. And so when we end a relationship, especially a romantic one, we automatically will project the hurt and the pain onto the individual we were in partnership with that is now the source of those negative feelings. At one time, they were the source of a lot of joyful feelings, a lot of positive feelings. And so when that's kind of yanked out from us and taken away, we feel a sense of, well, where did it go? You provided that to me, then you took it away from me. You're the one responsible for the hurt and the pain that I'm feeling right now. And in order to kind of support that story we're now creating, we'll add assumptions and we'll add additional, like, just more bullshit. We'll just add layers of bullshit to make ourselves feel better, to make the other person the problem or the issue versus, oh, actually, I did something here or there, or I could have done this or that better, or maybe there's unhealed things from your past. What we're trying to do in that situation is we're trying to vilify our partner. And in doing so, it allows us to cope with the loss. And it's interesting. I found myself in this interaction, I found myself grieving as if my partner had passed away. Now, the interesting thing and what gave me a little bit further insight here is that she and I are still really good friends. And prior to this, we were also really good friends. So there's not like ill will there. Us stepping out of the relationship wasn't because one of us really fucked up or one of us hurt the other person. It was more of just there was so much happening individually in both of our lives, and we were both not in the space, or we didn't have the emotional capacity to show up for ourselves and for our partner with all of the chaos happening in both of our lives at the moment. And then in the middle of that fire, we're like, let's start a new relationship. And so we realized, like, this is not good timing. As much as it felt right at a certain point in time, stepping into it, we realized there was a lot that in our minds was aligned, and then in practicality, once we were kind of in sharing space and going through the motions and especially applying the label, we realized there was more work to be done for us to show up in a healthy relationship. Now, I was arrogant in the belief that I had done so much work solo and as an individual that I was ready to step back into a relationship. The distinction is I did a lot of the work that I never had done in my life, and that's why I was jumping from relationship to relationship. I was running from those things. Now, what I didn't account for is the things that I carry trauma or even just habit from in my past relationships. And what was interesting is I found that once that label was applied, like girlfriend was applied, she pretty much just took over. And I'm using like a video game example here, but she pretty much took over somebody else's saved file. And automatically, as stepping into that role, it was as if every ex-girlfriend in my past had been playing the same continuous game with me. And even though the skin or the person themselves would change, the role being filled by my girlfriend was essentially always the same person. I'm using a lot of like quotes in this example and shit just to try to describe kind of the way that my mind processed it versus the reality of things. And so whoever I'm dating at the time, whoever my girlfriend is essentially carrying on the relationship I've had from the past. Not consciously, but subconsciously. In the sense that like, okay, in my past relationships, I had trust issues because of X, Y, and Z. So now stepping into a brand new relationship, those same trust issues exist because they haven't been processed and worked through in a healthy manner the same way I did taking time being single. So now stepping into relationships, these things are getting triggered and firing off, and it's like, oh shit, there's more work to be done that I couldn't do as a single individual because you're not experiencing those same things. When they come up and you have the live example, it's like, oh, why am I applying this past projection of an insecurity onto a new partner that hasn't even happened yet? And the realization struck me that I'm treating this as I did my last relationship, which I was treating as I did the relationship before that, before that, before that. And then I realized there were a lot of toxic mindsets that were brought into it because I had been in so many relationships that I didn't know how to be a healthy individual and approach things from love. And so there was so much projection, so much, anytime that I was in pain or insecure, I'd throw that back on my partner. And I never realized it. I got really, really good at essentially gaslighting because my ego was so good at protecting myself, like I could do no wrong. My actions were based on a response to the action that I would say was triggered by my partner, and say, okay, my girlfriend did this, which is why I did that. The justification there led to me not taking responsibility for whatever the issue was, the root of the issue. It was like, okay, well, in this specific interaction, you did this, so I did that. Not saying, okay, well, why did both of us do those things? And it's more of like, I approached it as I wanted to be right and I wanted them to be wrong. Not, I want to see this from different perspectives and look at this from a lens of love and say, how do I look at this and so we can both grow from it, we can both learn from it, and it's not pitting us against each other where it's me versus my girlfriend. It's me and my girlfriend against the problem or the hurdle or whatever's in front of us. And I realized that automatically, as soon as that label got applied, I became immediately combative. And not like violently, but like combative in that anything responsibility wise, with its chores around the house, whether it's finances, whether it's communication, whether it's making plans on the weekends, all of those things, a whole switch got flipped where it was like the way that my friend and I did things prior, we were completely compatible. We were completely everything was happy, everything was bubbly, it was great. The moment the label girlfriend got applied, it was like I was triggered into a fight or flight response without any justification or cause from the individual in front of me. All of it was carried over because I was like, oh shit, I'm in a relationship again. What do I have to do to protect myself? And essentially it's like relationship PTSD or something that triggered these past memories that I haven't worked through yet. And what's interesting to see here is I see that in so many other relationships. I see that where we step into something and we carry our past insecurities and our past traumas and apply them to people unjustly. And then that person you're in a new relationship with feels mistreated, And then we were surprised that the relationship comes to an end or it doesn't work out, or both individuals are unhappy and fighting all the time. And it's like, okay, well, now that I see that, I'm the common denominator there. I'm the root cause of why this doesn't work out. I'm the person responsible and in charge of how I react. I can play the victim card and I can project the blame onto other people and say, well, because of this and that is why. At the end of the day, I'm the one that's unhappy or the one that's causing this cycle to repeat. So until I take accountability for that, it's not going to change. The longer I'm in denial about it, the longer I'm delaying my own happiness. I'm prolonging the unhappiness by sitting in this cycle of like, well, blaming everybody else, not taking accountability. And that goes for any interactions, right? But especially in our romantic ones, it's like, it's so easy to put the blame on the partner because we also make this assumption or we take things for granted like, okay, well, that's my girlfriend now. She has to deal with me. She has a responsibility and an obligation. And the fact of the matter is, no, like, healthy, healed individuals have the wherewithal to be like, this is not working. I'm going to step away to see what parts of it didn't work and why. Was it me? Was it the other individual? Was it both of us? Was it the timing? Which aspects of why it didn't work do I actually control? And how can I take responsibility for them? And which actions are not in my control, but what actions can I take to reclaim control? So if somebody else is stepping into my life and making me unhappy, my responsibility in that interaction is to put distance and space so that they can no longer affect my mood. In the same way where if you realize that your partner is showing up in this way and projecting a lot of these things onto you, the healthy thing to do is to step away and remove yourself from the relationship. That is something I was actually really proud of that that my ex partner now did, because in my past I'm always the one that was ending the relationship once I just got fed up or essentially kind of got bored because I would treat my relationships as a coping mechanism to avoid confronting my own shit. So as soon as whatever the major thing, that the major hurdle in my partner's life was addressed and worked through, it was either, okay, well, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what my value in your life is. I don't know my purpose in your life anymore, because I was looking for a way to distract myself rather than like, I'm looking for a partner to be happy with. I'm looking for someone to share and grow with. It was more of, I'm looking for something to distract myself with that feels good. I was searching for immediate gratification constantly, just constantly seeking immediate gratification versus taking the time to step back and reflect on these things and look for a way to achieve delayed gratification through doing the hard work of self-reflection, of accepting things that I'm responsible for, journaling, and having hard conversations. Even these types of conversations with the person that is, well, with the ex-girlfriend, right? With the person that is essentially causing the pain. Now, the pain, going back to another tool that I use, the PI, right? PI is an acronym: perspective, intentions, and empathy. Now, the ending of our relationship, the intention was to salvage the friendship. It wasn't to be like, well, this didn't work, so kick rocks. I don't like you anymore. I don't want to be in your life anymore. It was a completely different ending than, well, it's interesting, right? It was a completely different outcome, even though it was the same type of ending. Now, the difference is how both individuals chose to approach it. We had lengthy, uncomfortable conversations about it. We talked about the feelings that came up honestly and vulnerably, versus in my past, it would be petty, passive aggressive jabs that I would throw at the other person, essentially to like cause pain. It's really hard to say out loud and admit that that was what I would use to do, but it was like, I'm hurting. What do I want to do? Misery loves company. I'm hurting. I want the other person to hurt equally as bad. Realizing that's not a healthy approach to things, I would consciously say, no, don't do that. But subconsciously, I would still carry this level of underlying resentment that I wasn't aware of. I always thought that I was good at masking it, but the shit is all over my face. I don't know who I would thought I was fooling, but as I became more self-aware, it's like, yeah, people can pick up on your energy. People can pick up on the response or lack of response that you give. And I think I thought that by shutting down, I was closing the world out and people couldn't see how I felt. The reality is people can see when you're in pain and hurting. And when you turn that into kind of like an attack or that jab, and you're causing pain or inflicting pain, even subconsciously, people can feel that or pick up on it and they don't want to be around it. Versus coming at it from love to be like, yes, I'm hurt right now because this means we lost the intimate side of our relationship now. We lost the ability to have the potential for a romantic interaction. We now have an understanding that that's not the relationship that's meant for us, or that that's what we're kind of building towards or working on now, moving forward into the future. But that doesn't mean, and again, like at the beginning of this, I mentioned, it felt like I was grieving like the loss as if this person had passed away. The fact that they didn't pass away and that they still exist means we can still be friends. It means we can still interact in a way where, yes, we enjoy each other's company. Yes, we enjoy each other's conversation. We enjoy each other's support. It doesn't mean we have to lose all of that. Now, if we can't continue to have a healthy exchange, then yes, we will lose that because we'll need to, again, increase the distance between us in order to do the healing and do the reflections in a way that is healthy and it's able to come from love. Because the moment that the fear of losing that person or the fear of being alone or any of the self-talk that becomes like self-deprecating, that will also mean we're going to start to project those insecurities and that pain back onto the other person. So if I'm in self-beat up and I'm talking shit about, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, I wasn't this or that enough in the relationship, or whatever story I'm again creating in my mind, that also will get subconsciously projected onto the other person, where it's like, well, I wasn't enough here, but also tit for tat, you didn't do this, or you weren't enough here, or I didn't like this about you. And then we're just kind of, again, inflicting more pain, and the whole eye for an eye thing, everybody's suffering. Versus, hey, I'm hurt that I'm losing this side of our relationship, but I'm grateful that we have the ability to talk about it and essentially salvage the friendship because we're approaching this from love. I still have love for this individual, so how do I have compassion for both where they're at, with where I'm at, and with what we're trying to build and create? Now, you have to also communicate actively and regularly, because the emotions are going to be peaking. You're going to be in these highs and lows of like, oh, well, I'm so grateful that we can still be friends. We had a great day hanging out and talking about this stuff together. And then, bam, several hours later, you're at home alone by yourself, and it's like, well, shit, I could really use some comfort right now. And if you're not conscious and able to say, well, I want to, again, from love, retain this friendship, you have to control those thoughts where they'll override and be like, well, who's causing this pain? Your ego comes in like a drunk best friend and be like, all right, who are we fucking up? Who's responsible for making my friend cry? Who's going to get an ass beating right now, right? Like, the ego wants to protect us, especially when it's emotional. The subconscious will be like, we got to protect. There's pain happening. Fight or flight. What's going on? How do we mitigate this? How do we immediate gratification? How do we solve the problem? How do we feel better? That's what the ego is going to do. And the intentions of that ego and our best friend, the ego, may be good, but the actual effect it's going to have is going to perpetuate the suffering and the pain, because then we're going to project that again onto the individual or even those around us that are trying to support us through a breakup. One thing for me specifically that I had to do was for the first few days, I was just like, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to acknowledge this. How do I get out of my head? How do I cope with it? And I spent a lot of time moping around, sleeping, and watching Netflix. And it was just a way to kind of escape And again, the instant gratification of like, I don't feel good, I want to feel good. How do I do that? What I realized was I was in denial of my emotions and trying to fight them. I was like, nah, we feel bad. I don't want to feel bad. Versus what I ended up doing was I woke up. I was like, I don't feel good. I feel like shit right now. I can lay here and be on my phone and scroll through Instagram for several hours, or I can get up and try to shift. So I got up and I did some chores that gave me some energy. I was like, cool, I snapped out of it. Bam, laid back down in a different room. Same thing. I was like, okay, I'm in my shit. I feel gross. I feel sick. Like not sick, but like I feel that feeling inside of the despair and the sadness. And again, I shifted. I was like, all right, let's try to do something again. And then I was like, all right, you know what? What is my body telling me? My body's telling me I'm sad. My body is reacting in a way where it's like, we're grieving right now. I can, again, prolong it and try to run from the feeling, or I can acknowledge it, accept it, and let it flow through me. And once I accepted that, it was like, okay, today I'm dedicating to feeling the feels, sitting in it, being in it, not running from it, not fighting it, and seeing what comes up. And that's what led me to making these videos again. It was the realization that once you accept that you're suffering, that you're in pain, that you're sad, it's the acceptance, right? The 5 stages of grieving: awareness, acceptance, forgiveness, acceptance again, and getting comfortable with revisiting it over and over again. Now with this, there's a layer of the healing aspect of our past trauma, but there's also a different, I guess, set of steps that we go through in the grieving process, because it's slightly different. It's a unique dynamic, and I've created and outlined the steps there that I'll speak into later. I lost my train of thought here, so I'm going to end the video here and grab clips from this and see what we can curate.